So firstly, I guess just from a company point of view, I mentioned in my opening, we had, pretty big change, as Kieran put it before, a very big period of introspection and reflection on how we were working and where we were going. And that was really cool. COVID actually gave us the opportunity to kind of hunker down and get that done. We brought in these two very clever and experienced professionals. And it was funny when I was listening to Duncan's talk. It's exactly the same in our tech organisation as the problem you were describing, right? Instead of sports medicine there and nutrition here and everything, we had the back end team there, the front end team there, the product team there. No, it's not our job, it's their job. No, talk to them. And that's exactly how we were, right? And same thing, didn't work, left gaps, right? So what we did was completely restructured the whole thing when these guys came in. So now it's multidisciplinary teams that own parts of the product. And it's like, right, if that needs to get better, it's all your problem. I don't give a shit whether it's a back-end thing or a front-end thing or an API thing or whatever. It's just, that's the product. That's what people want in their hands. That's what's important, right? That was an interesting parallel. I think a good lesson for everyone, right? It's not about discipline. It's about outcomes. So it was really cool to hear. Georgia had this a version of this up in a talk yesterday. She had a insight in the middle there between knowledge and wisdom. And I think this is a really cool way to frame things. I like to think about it this way. And so I was going to sort of frame this talk in this structure, just to kind of make sense of it all. Because look, our roadmap is 10 miles long. It's really organised now. If you actually want to dive in and go through it, for any clients, you can do that with our consulting team. They can take you through the roadmap in as much detail as you want. It's really well laid out. Basically, it's laid out in now, which is 3-month window, soon, which is probably the 3 months after that, or maybe 6, and then next, and then Lighthouse. So Lighthouse is almost the unreachable, but yeah, it might take 5 years, 10 years, whatever. So we've laid it all out like that, and it's really cool to look at it like that. So start with data, right? You have to have a very strong foundation at the bottom of this pyramid, right? To be able to absorb, to gather everything together. It's all about that gathering of parts, absorption, organizing, getting it all in one place, right? So that's kind of, I guess, our first area that I want to talk about. I won't go into the great detail of this, you can read it. We kind of had, we built the system originally for teams of 50 people. So back, 10 years ago. So a lot of work under the hood the last couple of years. We're now talking about organizations with tens. We already have those in the Olympic environment, but now potentially hundreds of thousands of users. One day, maybe millions, right? So a lot of work on that area. A lot of work on security. Working in the military again, we had to spend a very heavy lift of getting Smartabase over the wall and onto the .mil network. Just got its what's called an ATO a couple of weeks ago, so that was a huge achievement for our team and the customer team. But the great thing out of that is what sort of, I guess, almost falls out of that is the commercial certifications and things like that we sort of get along the way. And it's boring, but it's really important, right? We're working with all of these people. And the security of that is incredibly important. It's sacrosanct, right? So, so now we're, the heavy lifting's done on most of that. We've broken the back of it. Now we're sort of getting into, I guess, the more exciting stuff, which is really, really, really exciting. So I'll talk about these couple of things a little bit. Big one is sort of around, we'll get into this. Firstly, it's around sort of, if we're going to put something in someone's hand, it's got to be a great experience, right? Because that's the only way we're going to get them to put data in. So it's got to be fast. It doesn't just have to look good. It's got to be quick. It's got to be responsive. So we've done a lot of work on the engine of making things faster, especially around the mobile interfaces and things like that. So the charts are sort of showing a pretty dramatic improvements in that, but there's more to come, right? There's a phased plan with this. Things like the Bluetooth integration, and we can now sort of build on that. It could be different devices or more types of scales and different things like that over time. But again, speeding things up. And the way they're looking at this now is not around, okay, how many things can we integrate? It's around metrics like, 50% reduction in weigh-in time. That's now the KPI, not building this widget or building that. It's about the experience of the person on the end of it. So there's more of this coming up. We're continuing to really work on this. We're also working on, that's a screen there, that's good. I've got a sore neck. Working on some important things though, a couple of the important, just the high level things, being able to speed up the release cycles of everything. So being able to put things in people's hands in bite-sized chunks more quickly, rather than kind of big slow things. Big one, and this is an interesting thing, we sort of came to this and we're sort of like, okay, there's sport, and there's military, and it's, and one of the great things for me over the last couple of days has just been hearing the commonality. It's really, everyone has very similar challenges and goals, right? There are nuances, but yeah, you just keep hearing it again and again. It applies to both. And it's the same from a product point of view. When we get out and actually talk to all of our clients, everyone wants the same things. Things like, okay, we want to be able to take this offline with all of the apps, be able to do it in the field. We want to be able to, we really got to, have this onboarding process be really easy, right? So when we want to put this in someone's hand and bring them in, it's got to be so slick and so easy that they can do it. So working on that with things like magic links and QR codes and things like that. I guess the big project at the moment is what we call the new pro user experience. So for staff users, not just the normal logging into a laptop, but an actual, really tailored experiences for the professional users, which will be really cool. So around collecting data, but also viewing it, sharing it, and doing all of those things really quickly, which will be really cool. That slide got doubled up. Yeah, so this is a big one. So when we originally built the API, so the API is an application programming interface. It's the back end. So it's being able to get data in and out of the system on the back end, right? So this is how we've integrated all of the products and things like that. When we originally built it, it was designed to suck everything in. It wasn't really, it was kind of built as pretty much a one-way street, right? It was all about integrating, pulling all this data in from everything. Didn't really build it for pulling stuff out. And now that we've got all this huge demand signal around analytics tools that, sort of talked before about R and Shiny and other tools like that. And even, a lot of people now are putting up big data lakes where they're just sucking everything in from everywhere and putting it all in there. And the way that their old API worked is that was too hard to do. The illustration kind of explains it, but you'd have to kind of keep asking, is there anything new? Is there anything new? Is there anything new? And that just slowed the whole thing down. Just put way too much overhead on everything. So this new API that we're going to roll out really soon, 3 to 6 month timeline, brings in what they call webhooks. So it's just really nice. It sort of basically goes, hey, there's something new, come get it. And just really, really will make a massive difference to the whole platform's performance, which is really cool. I was quite staggered when you actually put together this diagram. I didn't realize how many different technologies we'd integrated, which is really cool. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to push along and as new devices. It's such a moving target. There's new things popping up all the time. We'll just keep doing that. That's part of our job. But even then, it's about making it easier, right? So this is one that's that'll come out again, hopefully in that 3 month time frame, at least the first version of it. Is what we call an integrations hub. So at the moment, if you want to integrate something, you've got to contact our team. They've got to get the programmers to go in and kind of hook it all up on the back end, and it might take a couple of days or something like that. This is now bringing an interface to that. So there's a classic saying in I guess in innovation, at first do things which won't scale, and when you see a big demand signal, then make it scalable, right? And so that's what that's all about. So our consultants or clients themselves will be able to just go in and pick up integrations without our and repush things if they have to, resync things if they have to, all those sorts of things. So that'll be a big game changer as well. So that's all about. It's kind of the boring stuff, but it's important because it gets you to the next level, right? It gets you now. You've got all this data coming in and out, exchanging, playing nicely, and you can move on. So information. This is a really big one, right? So we built the interface of Smartabase, over 10 years ago, the user interface. And we use a technology called Google Web Toolkit. So great technology and everything. But the big thing that's now coming is we're transitioning that off to a very modern technology called React. And this is a kind of a good way to explain it. So the way Smartabase was originally built, what they call a monolithic application. It's all kind of linked together, right? So if you want to change anything, you have to kind of re-release everything, and it's all inextricably linked. So it's really hard to kind of change things, and the analogy would be you've kind of got 40 mechanics working on one car at the same time, and they can't really fit under the hood. So the cool thing about this is it's now completely separates the front end from the back end, and with React we can now have different teams working on different projects that are completely independent of each other. So it's kind of almost like a whole bunch of different integrations of front end things. And that's going to really start to now unlock. It was quite a big job to do that. It was almost like separating Siamese twins. But now that that's done, we can now start to sort of reap the benefits of it. In this next release, you'll see the first page go live, and it's no big deal. It's actually quite funny if you were at the military meeting the other day, watching Adam Strang fumbling around trying to find his dashboards on that screen where there's just a bunch of things. So so there's a good example. So instead of that page, it'll now go to a nice page where we can add a lot of functionality to it, category sorting, all this sort of different thing. And that's just a simple page, right? It's like, oh, big deal. But it's kind of a one small step for man, one giant step for mankind kind of thing. Because once we do that, we get that live, and then we can start to unlock. What'll happen is over time is, and I'd say it'll sort of almost ramp like that, is that we'll just be able to sort of switch pages in and out. And initially they'll look kind of the same in terms of look and feel. They'll be more functional. And the reason for that is we don't want the whole thing to look like a patchwork quilt, right? So we don't want everything to look completely different. But then once they're all switched out, then we'll be able to sort of radically retheme things and really get into greenfield space in terms of new workflows and new interfaces and new ways of doing things, which is going to be really cool. And the way we're doing it, incidentally, is in the site sort of details, you'll actually be able to toggle these interfaces on and off. So you've got to think about change management and things like that as well. So toggle it on, see how it goes, toggle it back off, and go from there. So that's going to be really cool. Using that, we can now get into some real workflow enhancements. So it'll be sort of, as that starts to roll out, we're going to get into sort of reworking some of the functionality in Smartabase that isn't its strength, right? Things like scheduling, because people say, we've got a calendar in there, but people are like, oh, we want it to be drag and drop. And it's like, well, you can't do that in Google Web Toolkit, right? You can in React. So it just opens up all of these different possibilities. So yeah, look, those are sort of all in research phase right now. So if you want to get, and they'll sort of start cutting code in the new year, probably in January, on all of those 4. So if you want to get involved in any of them, if you're not already, just reach out to your consultant and say, I want to get involved in this one and put my 2 cents in. We're very keen to be as collaborative as possible on that. So data visualization is a big part of sharing information, right? And yeah, we need to continue to invest in that, not only in the tools, but in the knowledge of how to use them. And I think that's a big part of it. So I was like, oh, just out of interest, how many dashboards have we got live now? And I fell off my chair when I got the answer. 4,000 different dashboards live at the moment. I was like, whoa. Yeah, I was, and then I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah, I guess so. But yeah, crazy. So we'll continue to enrich that environment. Are we going to rebuild Tableau? No, that would be pretty stupid. But we're going to base it on customer feedback. And again, it's about at first doing things non-scalable, find out what people like and want to use, and just focus on building those well, not trying to build everything for everyone. Really focused purely on human performance, data visualization, right? I don't want to be able to visualize traffic data. It's of no interest to me. So yeah, we'll keep pushing along on that. But with that, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You build these tools, and our philosophy is always to give people tools that enable, rather than say you must do things this way, right? So we sort of did that, unleash it. People go crazy with it, build 4,000 dashboards with all sorts of crazy things in them that we never thought people would do. And then we go, oh crap, they're getting slow. We need to speed them up. So now there's a lot of work going on in the back to just really improve, and the OKR of the team is lightning fast dashboards. That's the project. So we already have made some pretty big jumps on that in the last kind of 6 months, but there's a lot more to come. There's a lot of improvements that can be made, which is really cool. But we're still releasing new widgets and things like that, and this new kind of resizing and again, being able to really sort of get right into design of these dashboards, and we'll keep doing that sort of stuff. Just going to group these two together because I don't know, just and you could get into huge academic arguments around how all the stuff breaks up. Just going to deal with them at the same time, but this is really where it gets important, right? The other two are just a means to an end, right? So firstly, it's about, sharing knowledge and empowering people with knowledge. So we released a whole new help center just a couple of months ago. If you haven't been in there yet, get in there and dive in. It's actually it's been a big hit, which is really cool. So really working on that. It's even got things like chatbots in it and things like that, so you can ask it questions, and it'll starting to use that sort of artificial intelligence for that, rather than artificial intelligence can be applied in many ways, not just to modeling and things like that. You do it for user experience, and that's actually where you can probably have even maybe bigger gains. So there's this is an interesting one as well. We have our sort of big Smartabase builder course. It's pretty hefty for anyone who's been through it, because it takes you right through every nut and bolt. You can really pull the car apart and put it back together by the time you get to the end of it. That's great for your people who are actually going to be in charge of building the thing. But we're just about to roll out a light course, which is just 1 hour. So 1 hour of bite-sized videos, which will just sort of give all of your users the ability to drive the car and know what they're doing. And most importantly, to really get people to understand what's possible, so that they can come back and go, hey, could we do this? I think we could do that. So that's going to be really cool. So stay tuned for that. That's imminent. Then this is really about, this is where the wisdom comes around, right? Over the last 3 days, people have stood up here or people have stood around tables at coffee and shared knowledge and wisdom. And that's where the magic happens. That's the important part, right? The data and information is just a way to get there. So we're really big on, as I mentioned the other day, about our product advisory councils. We really want to interview customers as much as possible around these new developments and what do you want, what do you need. So if you can give us your time, we'll take it. Testing new things. You might like to be on the cutting edge of things and test the new things as we roll them out. Put your hand up. It's all about it. The summit is something I'm really passionate about. I want to keep growing this because just an incredible group of people coming together. No egos, no dick swinging, as Duncan would put it. It's just people sharing their triumphs, their challenges, what are they stuck with, and that's so good. It just gives me a buzz. We're also starting to really, we're going to take a leadership role in this to some extent, and we want to start to actually really think about this on a broader scale, not just around what we're doing, but what we're all doing, right? So here's an example of a project that we're running at the moment called a Human Performance Maturity Model. So what this is about, it's kind of almost, I guess you could almost say it's an audit tool, but it gives you a framework to look at your organization and go, okay, how do we compare, right? On a scale from here to there, are we strong at this? Are we weak at that? Where do we need to improve? And it really sort of lays out a model. So we're just building that at the moment. If you would like to contribute to that, we would love you to. This is in the research phase. We've sort of come up with the first draft, but we want to really hear it from the experts, right? So yeah, dive into that. And we're going to do similar things around, the other idea was doing something around integrations, like starting to actually, okay, let's ask everybody and find out what are the good metrics to look at. We already heard a bit of that in the innovation session. So really starting to poll the audience, right, and get everyone to share that knowledge, bottle it, and then serve it up to you. So really, really passionate about that one as well. So looking to the future, right? So our focus to date has been largely on data and information, and then kind of leaving it to you guys to figure out the rest, right? So, we need to now, our goal now moving forward, and this is more Lighthouse, but it'll start now, is to start to contribute at all layers and go the full stack. And people often ask, what are you guys doing about AI and machine learning and data science and all of those words that you could argue for 4 days about what means what. But basically harnessing technology and computing power, to ultimately generate knowledge and wisdom. So we're really laying the foundations at the moment, right? So again, API v3 is a very big part of this. In that session before, you saw a few examples of how there's a bunch of tools out there like R and Shiny and Python and other things where you can do whatever the heck you want. Huge open source communities, websites, data scientists everywhere who can just self-learn these things and go crazy, right? They're not databases. They won't secure the data. They won't store it well, but you can do really cool stuff with it, right? And we don't want to, we just want to enable that. We're not going to say, no, don't do that because it's not Smartabase. That would be stupid, right? So yeah, that's really exciting. The first thing we are going to do is what we call industrialize that R Shiny capability. So at the moment, it's kind of almost a private library we share with people. Pretty soon it's going to get published up on GitHub and be a public library. And that way we can generate a community around it, can have forums, people can contribute to it. And that's going to be really, really exciting. But also being able to run it server-side in real time, rather than someone having to push a button to make it run every night, or we already do a bit of that, but it's kind of customers can't do it themselves, right? So this is all about, again, we've been doing it for a couple of years in a non-scalable way. Now it's about making it scalable and cutting it loose, right? So that's going to be really cool. The other one's really interesting, and this is the one I'm buzzing on, actually. So Smartabase collects a whole bunch of usage analytics because we sort of have to for audit, security, and that sort of stuff, right? It actually records every view, every edit, obviously. It records everything on the back end and just stores it away. It's a crap ton of data that's just sitting there. And we've also then built in, and it actually has a lot of value. We always sort of thought about it as, oh, it's just the stuff we have to do and keep, right, and shove it in a cupboard somewhere. But it actually carries with a lot of value. We've actually integrated there's a lot of technologies now that will even do things like record what you clicked, like or where you clicked and things like that. So really start to record a lot of rich and a lot of data, well-structured data on user experience. How are people using things, right? And so that's a big one that's landing now in terms of, and we're going to start to roll it out with some customers in the next 3 months. Around how can we use that data? How can we actually benefit from that? And there's a lot to it. So kind of looks like this. We've sort of mapped out, okay, here's all our options. There's a lot of different options in this AI, machine learning, data science area, right? And so where we're going to start now is the 2 in red. It's kind of almost at the 2 ends of it, right? So we are starting to boost up the data science capabilities in the consulting team and bringing in data science engineers who can do the coding in R and Shiny to support them, because a lot of our sports science staff know enough to be dangerous, and know what to do with it, but aren't sophisticated in coding it. So we're sort of almost, again, bringing in that team, putting a sophisticated coder with a sophisticated performance scientist to sort of get that going. And then out of that, as we start to see what people like and what works, again, we'll do it in the non-scalable way. And as we start to see what sticks and what derives value, we'll then turn it into products. right? So it might be a cluster model product, a cluster model widget or a heat map widget or whatever it is. But first we'll build it with R and Shiny, and then we'll build it in when it starts to really pick up and show value. So that's really cool. Who knows where that might lead? It might lead into eventually one day a predictive modeling engine, right? And you can already build predictive models with R and Shiny anyway, right? The one that really interests me though is starting at the other end, right? So even guiding how we use a system, right? So we've got this whole bunch of data and things like, for example, what is the most common way to visualize training load data? What chart gets used the most? How do people usually build them? What's the most sort of successful way of looking at that kind of data across our client base? Across those 4,000 dashboards that are out there, what works and what doesn't, right? That's really valuable data that no one's data in particular, in terms of it's got no privacy information in it or anything like that. It's the system's data. And we can then share that back with everyone and go, hey, 83% of our clients use this kind of combination of charts to visualize this problem or this area, which would be really cool. Lighthouse, eventually, and this is where I start to get excited, is even around things like you do then bring in artificial intelligence and layer it on top of that, and you get into the world of sort of bots, right? So, and you would see this on some websites, and like I said, in our help center, there's a basic bot there where, one of our clients was speaking a while ago is, what do you really want? What I really want is when I log in, it goes, we suggest you go and have these 10 conversations today. I'm not telling you that someone has a 82% chance of getting injured if they run faster than 20 miles an hour. That's more in the predictive modeling area, right? And there's probably a bit of witchcraft in there, maybe. Controversial topic. But we can sort of start to learn, right, from the user. When the GPS data comes in through the API and hits the system can learn from the behavior that, well, when that happens, we know that the next time the sports scientist logs in, they're going to go and look at the GPS dashboard. So instead of making them do that, just stick it on the front page, right? So yeah, that's what gets me excited. It's about making it easier for everybody and serving up suggestions, suggestion engines and things like that. That's where I think, because that is actually quite a well-structured data set, and there's a lot of it. And that's where we really can unleash some machine learning and techniques like that. So yeah, that's more the Lighthouse end of it. But starting with Red, I'm not even going to give you a timeline on the other stuff because we'll just have to see how it goes. But yeah, with that, we then start to create knowledge and hopefully eventually wisdom, right? Because yeah, at the end of the day, wisdom is all that matters, right? That's where we have to get to. Yeah, and we want to help. So, there's a lot of wisdom out there already, but how do we make that more ubiquitous and more, how do we democratize it? Everyone uses that word a lot these days, but how do we? How do we all get better? How do we get the human performance industry to get better? Because that's good for everybody, right? And that's about wisdom. So that's it. There's so many people I want to thank, and I'm probably going to forget them all. Firstly, I want to thank all of you for giving up 2 or 3 days of your time. I really want to thank all of our speakers. I thought every single presentation was awesome. It was unreal. How often does that happen at a conference? Usually there's a couple of duds in there, but they were all fantastic. They were just so good. So good. I learned so much. It was really good. I hope you all did too. I want to thank my team. I don't think anything's gone wrong apart from me having to talk last after Duncan. But yeah, it's been great. It's been slick. When we first ran this 4 years ago, I'd do everything. I was literally like plugging in projectors and setting up screens when people are walking in. And this year, everyone comes up to me going, "What do we do with this?" I'm like, "I don't know. Us, one of those guys." It's been unreal. So thank you so much. It's been as an attendee, it's been a great experience. So thank you. I know a hell of a lot of work went into it. Duncan, thank you so much for having us in your amazing house. Yeah, it's been unreal. And people keep asking me, how are you going to top this next year? I got no bloody idea. We might just come back here, eh? No, just kidding. No, thank you so much, Duncan. It's just unreal. And what you've built here and the work you're doing is yeah, it is best in class. So kudos to you, man. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. Actually, my team back home, because a lot of them have done a lot of work as well behind the scenes, and so thanks to them as well. If you're coming to the Stones tonight, I've managed to find a green one. How cool is that? Yeah, so we're going to meet at the Rara Irish Pub at the Mandalay at 6 p.m. Lock in. It's going to be good. Yeah, so hey, thank you all. I hope to see you all here next year. Bring some friends. Let's build this thing. I can't wait to see what comes back next year, because every year the knowledge and wisdom that comes back just keeps improving and improving and improving. And it's so cool. You know, we're pretty committed to what we do, and I'm going to execute the vision we've got or die trying. But when I walk away from this, it's just that whole commitment just gets such an upgrade. And yeah, I'm super fired up. So, and I know our whole team will be. So yeah, travel safe, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.